I cared for my husband after his accident for 3 years. Then I heard him whisper on the phone, "She's just my caretaker." He didn't know I was already stronger than ever. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I need to get this off my chest. It's been 6 months since I walked away, and I still can't believe I actually did it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. 3.5 years ago, I was a different person entirely. I was Sarah Mitchell, 29, marketing coordinator at a tech startup in Austin. I had dreams of becoming a creative director, maybe starting my own agency someday. I lived in a cute downtown apartment with my boyfriend of 4 years, Marcus. We were that couple, you know the type. The one everyone said was relationship goals. We hiked on weekends, tried new restaurants, talked about traveling to Thailand, and maybe getting married in 2 years when he finished his MBA. Marcus was everything I thought I wanted. Tall, charming, ambitious. He was studying business administration while working part-time as a personal trainer. Women turned their heads when he walked by, but he chose me. Plain, quiet Sarah with her messy bun and coffee addiction. I felt so lucky. So grateful. I made myself smaller to fit into his bigger dreams, turned down a promotion that would have required more hours because we needed to spend time together. I paid most of our bills because his student loans were an investment in our future. I was happy to sacrifice. That's what love was, right? Then came October 15th, 2021. The date is burned into my memory like a brand. Marcus was driving home from his night classes when a drunk driver ran a red light. The impact crushed 3 vertebrae in his spine and caused a traumatic brain injury. The doctors said he was lucky to be alive. Lucky. The first few months were a blur of hospitals, insurance battles, and learning medical terminology I never wanted to know. Spinal cord compression, neurological deficits, cognitive rehabilitation, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. The list went on and on. Marcus spent 4 months in various facilities. I was there every day, learning how to help him eat, how to manage his medication schedule, how to transfer him from bed to wheelchair. The brain injury affected his short-term memory and emotional regulation. Some days he was the man I loved. Other days he was a stranger who screamed at nurses and threw things across the room. His parents lived in Florida and visited twice, once right after the accident, once when he was discharged. "You're so good with him," his mother said, patting my shoulder. "We know he's in good hands." Then they flew back to their retirement community and sent care packages every few months. His friends stopped visiting after the first month. "It's just too hard to see him like this," his best friend Jake told me. "Let me know when he's back to normal, yeah?" But I stayed. Of course I stayed. This was the man I loved, the man I'd planned a future with. In sickness and in health, right? Even though we weren't married, even though he'd never actually proposed, even though sometimes I caught him looking at me like I was the reason his life had fallen apart. When Marcus was discharged, I moved us into a ground floor apartment across town. It was smaller, uglier, but accessible. I quit my job to become his full-time caregiver. I told my boss it was temporary, just until he got back on his feet. She held my position for 3 months before hiring someone else. "We understand," she said. "Family comes first." Family. That's what I thought we were. The first year was the hardest. Marcus was still largely bedbound, dependent on me for everything. I learned to work a Hoyer lift, to manage his bowel and bladder routine, to spot the early signs of pressure sores. I became an expert on disability benefits, insurance appeals, and medical supply companies. I slept 4 hours a night if I was lucky, always listening for the sound of distress or the beep of his monitoring equipment. I remember the exact moment I realized I'd disappeared. It was month 8 post-accident, and I caught a glimpse of myself in the bathroom mirror while giving Marcus his evening medications. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. Hollow cheeks, gray roots showing through what used to be highlighted blonde hair, circles under my eyes so dark they looked like bruises. I was wearing one of Marcus's old t-shirts and sweatpants that had lost their elastic. When was the last time I'd worn makeup? When was the last time I'd laughed? Marcus was making progress, slowly. He could feed himself with adaptive utensils, transfer to his wheelchair with minimal assistance, and his memory was improving. The occupational therapist was optimistic about him eventually living semi-independently, but the progress felt glacial when you were living it day by day. Somewhere around the 18-month mark, something shifted. Marcus was having a good day, alert, conversational, almost like his old self. We were watching Netflix when a commercial came on for a travel company. Beautiful couples walking hand in hand on beaches, climbing mountains, laughing over candle-lit dinners. "We should go somewhere when I'm better," Marcus said suddenly. "Maybe not Thailand like we planned, but somewhere accessible. There are cruise ships designed for people with disabilities." I looked at him, this man I'd devoted my life to, and felt nothing. No spark of excitement, no flutter of possibility, just a cold, empty recognition that I didn't want to go anywhere with him, that I didn't want to be his girlfriend anymore, that I wasn't even sure I liked him as a person. The guilt was immediate and crushing. What kind of monster falls out of love with someone because they got hurt? What kind of shallow, terrible person was I? But I couldn't unfeel what I felt, or didn't feel. That night, after Marcus fell asleep, I opened my laptop for the first time in months. I'd been so focused on his rehabilitation that I'd forgotten about my own existence entirely. I started browsing job listings, not because I intended to apply, but because I missed that version of myself. The one with ambitions and goals that extended beyond medication schedules. That's when I saw it. A remote position for a digital marketing specialist. The job description mentioned flexible hours and the ability to work from anywhere. On a whim, I updated my resume and sent it off. I didn't tell Marcus. I wasn't even sure why I did it. They called me back 3 days later. The interview went better than I expected. Yes, I'd been out of the workforce for over a year, but I'd kept up with industry trends during my downtime. I hadn't, but I crammed for 3 days straight before the second interview. They liked my ideas for their social media strategy, and they were impressed by my ability to manage multiple priorities under pressure. Caregiving, it turned out, was excellent preparation for project management. They offered me the position at 60 time to start, with the possibility of going full-time after a probationary period. The salary was lower than my old job, but it would be enough to cover my personal expenses and contribute to household costs. More importantly, it would be mine, something that belonged to me, not to us, not to Marcus's recovery. I told Marcus I was taking on some freelance work to help with expenses. He nodded absently, focused on his physical therapy exercises. "That's smart," he said. "We could use the money." We, always we, even when he meant me. The job started slowly, a few hours here and there, mostly when Marcus was napping or at appointments. But gradually I found myself carving out more time. I worked early in the morning before he woke up, late at night after he went to bed. I set up a small office space in the second bedroom. Nothing fancy, just a desk from IKEA and decent lighting. For the first time in almost 2 years, I had something that was just mine. The work energized me in ways I'd forgotten were possible. I was good at it. My campaigns performed well, clients specifically requested to work with me, and my supervisor started hinting about that full-time position. I began taking online courses in the evenings, advanced Google Analytics, social media strategy, even a business law class that had nothing to do with marketing, but everything to do with proving to myself that my brain still worked. Marcus noticed the change, but not in the way I expected. "You seem different lately," he said one evening as I helped him transfer to bed. "More energetic or something." "I'm just feeling better," I said, which was true. "Maybe I'm finally adjusting to everything." He nodded, satisfied with that explanation. It never occurred to him that my improvement had nothing to do with accepting our situation and everything to do with building an escape route from it. Month by month, I became more myself. I started doing yoga videos in the living room after Marcus went to sleep. I bought new clothes that actually fit. I got my hair cut and colored for the first time in 2 years. Nothing dramatic, just a trim and fresh highlights, but I felt human again. I reconnected with a few old friends via social media, carefully curating my posts to show just enough of my life to maintain connections without inviting uncomfortable questions. The biggest change was financial. I'd always been the more responsible one with money, but caregiving had made me hyper-aware of the importance of independence. I opened my own savings account, separate from our joint account. Every month, I moved a portion of my freelance income into that account. I told myself it was just emergency money, but deep down, I knew what I was really doing. I was preparing to leave. The realization didn't come all at once. It crept up on me over months of small moments. The way Marcus spoke to me like I was staff rather than a partner. The way he took my care for granted, never saying thank you, never acknowledging that I'd given up my entire life for his recovery. The way he talked about the future like I was just expected to be there, waiting, ready to sacrifice whatever was necessary for his dreams. I started paying attention to how he treated other people, the physical therapists, the nurses, delivery drivers. He was polite to them, even charming. But with me, he was demanding, impatient, sometimes cruel. When I was slow to bring his lunch, he snapped. When I forgot to refill his water bottle, he sulked for hours. When I mentioned being tired, he reminded me that he was the one who'd been through trauma. It was like he'd divided the world into 2 categories: people whose opinions mattered, and me. By the 3-year mark, Marcus had made remarkable progress. He could live independently with minimal support, maybe a housekeeper twice a week, some help with grocery shopping and transportation. His memory was almost back to normal, and his mood swings had stabilized. He was even talking about going back to school to finish his MBA, this time online. I should have been celebrating. Instead, I felt trapped. The better he got, the less reason I had to leave. What kind of person abandons someone just as they're getting their life back? But I was getting my life back too, wasn't I? My freelance work had become a full-time position with benefits and stock options. I had my own money, my own routine, my own goals. I was 32 years old, and for the first time since the accident, I could imagine a future that excited me. I just couldn't imagine Marcus in it. The conversation I overheard changed everything, but not in the way you might expect. It was a Thursday afternoon in March. I'd been working at my desk when I realized I needed some documents from the filing cabinet in the living room. Marcus was on the couch talking on his phone. I assumed he was speaking with his physical therapist, or maybe one of his old school friends who'd recently started checking in again now that he was better. I was halfway across the room when I heard him laugh. Really laugh, in a way he hadn't laughed with me in years. "No, man, it's not like that at all," he was saying. "Sarah? She's just my caregiver, basically. I mean, we have history, but it's complicated. She's been taking care of me since the accident, and it would be weird to kick her out before I'm totally independent, you know?" I froze. Something about his tone made me step behind the doorway instead of continuing into the room. Trust me. I know it looks weird from the outside, like I'm stringing her along or something, but she's getting something out of it too. Free rent, a sense of purpose. And honestly, she's pretty much given up on herself anyway. It's not like she has anywhere else to go. The silence stretched while the other person spoke. "Yeah, I've thought about that. Once I finish the program and get back to work, I'll probably find my own place. She's a good person, don't get me wrong. Really dedicated. But I can't live my whole life feeling guilty about her choices, you know? She decided to play the martyr. That's on her." Another pause. "Dating?" "Nah, not while I'm living with her. Too complicated. But I've been talking to someone online, Rebecca. Remember her from my undergrad? She reached out after she heard about the accident. We've been video chatting pretty regularly. She's in Denver now, working for some marketing firm. Still gorgeous." My stomach clenched, but I kept listening. "The thing is," Rebecca doesn't see me as broken or fragile. She knew me before all this happened. With Sarah, I'm always going to be her patient, her project. Even if I got completely better tomorrow, she'd still look at me like I might break. That's no way to live. I heard him shifting on the couch, probably adjusting his position. I'm not trying to be an asshole about it. Sarah's been amazing, really. I couldn't have gotten through this without her. But that doesn't mean I owe her the rest of my life. We never even got engaged, technically. She's not my wife. She chose to stay, and I'm grateful, but I didn't ask her to give up everything. That was her decision. The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. I slipped back to my office and quietly closed the door. I should have been devastated, heartbroken, furious. 3 years of my life, my youth, my career, my dreams, all for a man who saw me as temporary help with a martyr complex. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Relief. He was right about one thing. I had made my own choices. But he was wrong about everything else. I wasn't broken. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't a victim. I was a 32-year-old woman with a full-time remote job, $15,000 in personal savings, excellent credit, and a skill set that had only gotten stronger during my time off. I had references who thought I was brilliant, clients who valued my work, and a growing network of professional contacts who saw me as competent and valuable. I wasn't his patient or his project. I was the woman who had single-handedly managed his entire recovery while building my own career in secret. I was the woman who had learned medical care, mastered insurance systems, and maintained a household while dealing with grief, exhaustion, and the complete absence of support from anyone else in his life. I was a fucking warrior, not a martyr. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. While Marcus slept, I made coffee and opened my laptop. I had planning to do. First, I researched apartments in my price range. I'd been paying 2/3 of our current rent anyway, so I had options. I found a 1-bedroom place in a complex with a gym and a pool, available for move-in at the end of the month. Next, I contacted a lawyer about my options. We'd never married, but we'd been living together for years, and I'd been providing unpaid care. I wanted to understand what, if anything, I might be entitled to, and what my obligations were. The consultation was enlightening. I owed him nothing legally, and given that I'd been supporting him financially for the past year while providing unpaid care, he'd have a hard time claiming any entitlement to my assets or income. Then I made a list of everything that would need to be arranged for Marcus to live independently. Home health aid for a few hours twice a week, grocery delivery service, transportation service for medical appointments, housekeeper. I researched companies, read reviews, made preliminary contacts. I wasn't going to abandon him. I was going to ensure he had professional support to replace my unpaid labor. The support he could have been receiving all along if he'd been willing to admit he needed help from someone other than his grateful girlfriend. It took me 2 weeks to put everything in place. 2 weeks of acting normal while I arranged my exit strategy. 2 weeks of listening to him complain about small inconveniences while I coordinated the services that would replace me. 2 weeks of watching him video chat with Rebecca while I researched moving companies. I didn't confront him about what I'd heard. What was the point? He wasn't wrong about his feelings, and I wasn't trying to change his mind. I was simply accepting the reality he'd laid out and acting accordingly. On a Tuesday morning, while Marcus was at physical therapy, the movers came. I'd been gradually relocating my belongings over the past week, clothes, books, personal items, so there wasn't much left. Just my desk, my chair, and a few boxes of things I'd accumulated during our years together that felt worth keeping. I left him a letter on the kitchen counter, along with a folder containing contact information for all the services I'd arranged, medical records, insurance information, and a detailed care plan I'd typed up. The letter was short. Marcus, I'm moving out today. This isn't about anger or revenge. It's simply time for both of us to move forward independently. I've arranged for a home health aide, Patricia from Compass Care, she'll start Thursday, grocery delivery, transportation services, and a housekeeper. All the information is in the folder. Your insurance will cover most of the aid services, and I've prepaid the first month of everything else to give you time to take over the arrangements. You're capable of living independently now, which was always the goal. I'm proud of your recovery and grateful I could be part of it. I've taken only my personal belongings and moved into my own apartment. My contact information is below if you need anything during the transition period. I wish you well. Sarah. I left my key on top of the letter and walked out of the apartment I'd called home for 3 years. My phone started ringing 20 minutes later. I didn't answer. By evening, I had 17 missed calls and 12 voicemails. I listened to them once, then deleted them. The progression was predictable: confusion, anger, bargaining, guilt-tripping, and finally threats to make things difficult for me if I didn't come back and discuss this like adults. I changed my number the next day. That was 6 months ago. I've heard through mutual acquaintances that Marcus is doing well. He finished his online MBA program, got a job with a consulting firm, and moved to Denver. I assume he and Rebecca are together now, though I don't ask for details. I'm doing well too. Better than well, actually. I got promoted to senior marketing specialist 3 months ago, with a salary that's higher than I was making before the accident. I've been taking evening classes toward an MBA of my own, not because I need it for work, but because I want it for me. I joined a hiking group and discovered I love rock climbing. I'm training for my first half marathon in the spring. Last month, I went on my first real date since before the accident. David is a teacher I met at a coffee shop near campus. He's kind and funny and treats me like an interesting person whose opinions matter. When I told him, an abbreviated version of my story, he said, "You must be incredibly strong to have handled all that." Not, "You're so good for staying," or "He's lucky to have had you." He saw my strength, not my sacrifice. We're taking things slowly, but I like him. More importantly, I like the woman I am when I'm with him. The woman I am all the time now, actually. I don't regret the 3 years I spent taking care of Marcus. That experience taught me things about myself I never would have learned otherwise. I learned I'm capable of more than I ever imagined. Not just endurance and sacrifice, but strategy, resilience, and reinvention. I learned the difference between love and obligation, between choosing to help and losing yourself in the process. Most importantly, I learned that I don't need someone else's validation to have value. I'm not just someone's caregiver or girlfriend or support system. I'm Sarah, and I'm enough all by myself. Marcus thought I'd given up on myself, that I had nowhere else to go. He was wrong. I had everywhere to go. I just needed to remember how to walk away. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't staying. Sometimes it's leaving. Sometimes it's remembering that you were never just the caregiver. You were always so much more.